The world called Maya a scammer and threw her out in the rain. But what she did next shocked Ethan. One rainy afternoon in Dallas, a paralyzed billionaire laughed when a little black girl climbed over his fence carrying an old bucket and said, "I'll wash your feet and you'll walk." It sounded like a joke, until he noticed an old photograph of himself hidden inside the bucket. As days turned into weeks, the child everyone dismissed began uncovering secrets doctors had overlooked, exposing truths powerful people wanted buried, and awakening hope in a man who had given up on life. What began as an impossible promise soon became a story of kindness, betrayal, redemption, and a life-changing miracle that neither of them could have imagined. A light rain drifted across the sprawling backyard of Ethan Caldwell's mansion, turning the stone pathways dark and glossy beneath the gray Dallas sky. From where he sat in his wheelchair beneath the covered patio, Ethan watched the drops ripple across the surface of his swimming pool. The water reflected the clouds overhead, dull and lifeless, much like the way he felt most days. 3 years earlier, Ethan Caldwell had been one of the most respected technology entrepreneurs in America. His company had transformed industries. His face had appeared on magazine covers. Investors had fought for a chance to sit across a table from him. Now he spent most afternoons staring into the rain. The helicopter crash had taken more than the use of his legs. It had taken his marriage. It had taken his confidence. It had taken the future he once imagined. Doctors had called his condition permanent. Specialists from New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago had all reached the same conclusion. No recovery, no miracle, no second chance. At first, Ethan had fought. Then he had hoped. Eventually, he had stopped doing both. The automatic gate buzzed somewhere in the distance. A security vehicle rolled past the front driveway. Everything looked normal, until movement near the rear fence caught his eye. Ethan frowned. Someone was climbing over the wall. For a moment, he thought he was imagining it. Then a small figure appeared on the other side. A child. She dropped lightly onto the wet grass and adjusted something she was carrying. Ethan blinked. The girl couldn't have been older than 9. She wore faded sneakers, a yellow raincoat that looked 2 sizes too large, and jeans with patched knees. In one hand, she carried a worn plastic bucket. In the other was a folded white towel. "What in the world?" Ethan muttered. The girl looked around the massive backyard as if she had entered another planet. Then she spotted him. Instead of running away, she smiled. A calm, confident smile, the kind adults rarely carried. She started walking directly toward him. Ethan reached for the call button attached to his chair. Security would be here in seconds. Yet something about her stopped him. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't acting like someone trespassing onto the property of a billionaire. She walked with purpose. When she reached the patio, rainwater dripped from the edge of her hood. She set the bucket down carefully. Then she looked directly into Ethan's eyes. "My name is Maya Brooks," she said. Ethan stared. The girl sounded polite, respectful, completely serious. "Do your parents know you're here?" he asked. She ignored the question. Instead, she unfolded the old towel and placed it neatly across her lap. Then she knelt on the wet stone floor. Ethan frowned harder. "What are you doing?" Maya took a slow breath. The rain seemed to quiet around them. For a brief moment, the entire world felt strangely still. Then she spoke. "I'll wash your feet," she said softly. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And you'll walk," silence. For 1 second. 2. Then Ethan laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. The sound echoed beneath the patio roof. Maya didn't laugh. She didn't even smile. She simply waited. Ethan shook his head. "Kid, you have absolutely no idea who you're talking to." "I know exactly who I'm talking to." Really? You're Ethan Caldwell, he smirked. Most people know that. You're lonely. The smile disappeared from his face. Maya continued. You stopped believing people when they tell you things can get better. Ethan felt an unexpected irritation rise inside him. Who told you that? My grandma. That answer only confused him more. Your grandmother knows me? Maya looked down at the bucket. Not exactly. The rain intensified. Thunder rumbled somewhere far away. Ethan studied the little girl. She didn't look dangerous. She didn't look manipulative. She looked like a child. A very poor child. Yet somehow she stood before him with the confidence of someone carrying a secret. Maya, Ethan said carefully, how did you even get in here? I climbed the fence. Why? Because I needed to see you. Security still hadn't arrived. That annoyed Ethan. Yet he hadn't pressed the emergency button either. Something kept him listening. Something he couldn't explain. Maya slowly reached into the bucket. You don't believe me? No, Ethan admitted. I know. Then why are you here? Because my grandma told me some people stop healing long before their bodies do. Ethan leaned back. His jaw tightened. 3 years. 3 years of doctors. 3 years of therapy. 3 years of hearing strangers tell him to stay positive. He was tired of all of it. You should go home, he said. Instead of leaving, Maya pulled something from the bucket. A photograph. Old, worn, slightly faded by time. She held it carefully. Ethan's eyes drifted toward it. At first he barely paid attention. Then he froze. The photograph slipped from Maya's fingers onto the stone floor. Ethan stared. His heartbeat suddenly quickened. Because the man standing in the photograph was him. 20 years younger, standing beside a small church building, smiling, healthy, walking. His breath caught in his throat. For a moment he forgot the rain, forgot the wheelchair, forgot everything. Where did you get that? He whispered. Maya didn't answer immediately. She picked up the photograph and gently brushed away a few drops of water. Then she looked at him. My grandma kept it. Ethan's heart pounded. The image was real. He remembered that day. A community fundraiser, a neighborhood church, a place he hadn't thought about in decades. Only a handful of photographs had been taken there. Very few people would still have one. Who was your grandmother? Ethan asked quietly. Maya's eyes softened. Her name was Ruth Brooks. The name hit him like a distant echo. Not familiar enough to recognize, but familiar enough to hurt. Somewhere deep inside his memory, a forgotten door had begun to open. And for the first time in years, Ethan Caldwell felt something he hadn't expected to feel. Curiosity. Maya placed the photograph back inside the bucket. Then she stood. Rain tapped against the roof overhead. The little girl smiled once more. Not because she had convinced him, not because she had accomplished anything, but because she seemed certain this was only the beginning. I'll come back tomorrow, she said. Ethan stared at her. Why? Maya glanced toward the photograph, then back at him. Because my grandma spent 20 years waiting for me to find you. And before Ethan could ask another question, the little girl picked up her bucket, turned toward the rain, and walked away, leaving a billionaire frozen beneath the gray Dallas sky, and one impossible question echoing through his mind. How did a poor little girl from the other side of the city end up carrying a photograph he thought the world had forgotten? The answer was waiting, and it would change both of their lives forever. That night, Ethan Caldwell barely slept. Rain continued tapping against the tall windows of his mansion long after darkness settled over Dallas. The photograph sat on the desk in his study, beneath a pool of golden light from an antique lamp. He had looked at it at least 50 times. Every time the same questions returned. Who was Ruth Brooks? Why had she kept his photograph for 20 years? And why had she sent a little girl to find him now? Ethan leaned back in his leather chair and rubbed his temples. His legs remained motionless beneath the blanket draped over his wheelchair. 3 years. 3 years since the accident. 3 years since specialists had told him to accept reality. 3 years since hope became something he no longer trusted. Yet somehow a 9-year-old girl carrying an old bucket had managed to disrupt that certainty in less than 10 minutes. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight. Still awake. Still thinking about Maya. Still hearing her voice. Your legs aren't dead. The words irritated him. And for reasons he couldn't explain, they also stayed with him. The next morning arrived under clear blue skies. Sunlight spilled across the city. From the 20-foot windows of his dining room, Ethan watched gardeners trim hedges while staff moved quietly through the house. Everything appeared normal, except his mind wasn't. At breakfast, he found himself staring toward the backyard fence. Waiting. The realization annoyed him. He wasn't waiting for anyone. Certainly not for a little girl who climbed walls and made impossible promises. Yet when noon passed and she still hadn't appeared, disappointment crept in unexpectedly. Ethan immediately pushed the feeling away. Ridiculous. Meanwhile, across the city, life looked very different. South Dallas carried a rhythm all its own. City buses groaned along cracked streets. The scent of fried food drifted from corner restaurants. Old neon signs buzzed above laundromats. Children rode bicycles through apartment complexes where paint peeled from walls and broken basketball hoops leaned sideways above worn concrete. This was Maya Brooks's world. She lived in a small apartment building squeezed between a discount grocery store and a tire shop. The building was old. The elevator hadn't worked in years. The hallway lights flickered constantly. Yet somehow Maya always seemed to move through it, carrying more kindness than most people carried through mansions. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, carrying 2 bags of groceries. One belonged to her. The other belonged to Mrs. Jenkins. Mrs. Jenkins was 82 years old and lived alone. Arthritis made walking painful. Every Tuesday and Friday, Maya carried her groceries upstairs. Nobody paid her. Nobody asked her. She simply did it. When she reached apartment 304, she knocked twice. The door opened slowly. Maya, honey. Mrs. Jenkins smiled immediately. You didn't have to do this again. I know, Maya grinned, but I wanted to. The older woman shook her head. Your grandma would have been proud of you. For a brief moment, sadness crossed Maya's face. She missed hearing those words from Grandma Ruth herself. 6 months had passed since the funeral. 6 months since the apartment felt truly alive. Yet she still carried her grandmother everywhere she went, especially in the old notebook tucked inside her backpack. The notebook was worn and fragile. The corners were bent. Several pages were stained from years of use. Inside were notes, observations, drawings, and stories Grandma Ruth had collected while helping people throughout her life. Most adults dismissed it as nonsense. To Maya, it was treasure. After leaving Mrs. Jenkins's apartment, Maya headed toward the neighborhood community kitchen. The small building sat beside a church parking lot. Every afternoon, volunteers served meals to families struggling to get by. As soon as Maya entered, several people smiled. Not because she was important, because she helped. Always. Without being asked. Morning, Maya, called Mr. Lewis from behind the serving counter. Morning. Think you can wipe down tables? She nodded immediately. 20 minutes later, she was cleaning tables, carrying trays, and helping elderly visitors find seats. At one point, she noticed a homeless man sitting alone near the back wall. His coat was torn. His shoes were falling apart. Most people walked past him without looking. Maya didn't. She carried over an extra bowl of soup. Here. The man looked surprised. Thank you. She smiled. My grandma said nobody should eat alone. The man lowered his eyes. For a second, he looked like he might cry. Those moments happened often around Maya. People felt seen, even when nobody else noticed them. Unfortunately, not everyone appreciated her kindness. Later that afternoon, Maya sat outside the community kitchen reading Grandma Ruth's notebook. A group of teenagers walked by. One of them laughed. There goes the little healer. Another rolled his eyes. Still trying to fix people with magic water? The others laughed. Maya looked down at the notebook. She had heard it all before. Weird girl, crazy girl, church girl, magic girl. The words still hurt. She simply didn't show it. One boy pointed toward the notebook. You really think that old thing knows more than doctors? Maya remained quiet. The teenagers eventually left. Their laughter echoed down the sidewalk. For several moments, Maya stared at the pages. Then she opened to a section written entirely in Grandma Ruth's handwriting. The ink had faded slightly, but the words remained clear. Some wounds live in the body, others live in the heart. If you heal only one, the other keeps hurting. Maya smiled softly. That sounded exactly like Grandma Ruth. The old woman had spent her life helping people nobody else cared about. She never claimed to perform miracles. She simply listened. She cared. And sometimes that changed everything. As the afternoon sun lowered across Dallas, Maya turned another page. This page contained something different. A photograph had once been attached there. The edges of old tape remained visible. Beneath it, Grandma Ruth had written a name. Ethan Caldwell. Maya traced the letters gently. She remembered the first time she found that page. It had happened after the funeral, while sorting through Grandma Ruth's belongings. Most pages described patients, families, neighbors, church members. But Ethan's page was different. There were notes, questions, dates, and one sentence written near the bottom. If anything ever happens to him, find him. Maya never understood why. Until she saw Ethan's face on television. The moment she recognized him, she knew. Grandma Ruth had wanted her to find him. So she did. Simple as that. The sound of a city bus pulling up nearby snapped her back to the present. She closed the notebook, checked the time. 3 o'clock. A small smile appeared, because she had somewhere to be. Across the city, beyond the neighborhoods where nobody believed her, beyond the community kitchen, beyond the cracked sidewalks. At a mansion where a lonely billionaire sat staring at the world through a wheelchair. A man who didn't believe her either. Yet. Maya stood, picked up her old bucket, folded the white towel carefully, then started walking toward the bus stop. She didn't know exactly how she was going to help Ethan Caldwell. She only knew one thing. Grandma Ruth had trusted her, and that was enough. Several miles away, Ethan sat once again beneath the backyard patio. The afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the lawn. He checked his watch, then looked toward the fence. A minute later, movement appeared. A small figure in a yellow raincoat, carrying an old bucket, walking toward him with the same fearless smile. And this time, Ethan realized something that unsettled him more than anything she had said yesterday. He was actually glad she came back. But he still didn't know why. And neither of them realized that hidden inside Grandma Ruth's notebook was a secret capable of changing everything Ethan believed about his accident. A secret waiting to be uncovered. A secret that would soon put powerful people in danger and place Maya directly in the middle of a fight she never saw coming. The late afternoon sun cast long golden shadows across Ethan Caldwell's backyard as Maya approached the patio carrying her bucket. This time, security noticed her. 2 guards immediately started moving toward the fence. "Sir, she's back," one of them said into his radio. Ethan looked up from the financial report resting on his lap. For a brief moment, he considered telling them to remove her. That would have been the simplest solution, the most logical one. The solution the old Ethan Caldwell would have chosen without hesitation. Instead, he surprised himself. Let her through. The guards exchanged confused glances. "Sir? You heard me." The men stopped. Maya continued walking across the lawn. The bucket swung gently beside her. The same yellow raincoat. The same old towel. The same impossible confidence. She reached the patio and smiled. "Hi, Mr. Caldwell." Ethan folded the report. "You came back. You sound surprised." "I am." Maya set down the bucket. "I told you I would." Something about her certainty made Ethan shake his head. Most adults broke promises. Most business partners broke promises. Most friends disappeared when life became difficult. Yet this child treated her word like something sacred. She sat down on the edge of the patio. For several moments, neither spoke. Birds chirped in distant trees. The fountain bubbled quietly nearby. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "What exactly did your grandmother tell you about me?" Maya looked thoughtful. "Not much." "Then why did she keep my picture?" "Because she said one day you'd need help." Ethan laughed softly. Looks like she was right. The words came out more bitter than he intended. Maya noticed. She always seemed to notice. "You're sad." Ethan looked away. "No." "Yes, you are." The blunt honesty caught him off guard. Children usually feared him. Employees certainly did. Board members chose every word carefully around him. Nobody simply looked him in the eye and said what they thought. Nobody except Maya. "I'm fine," he replied. "No, you're not." The certainty in her voice irritated him. "You're very confident for a 9-year-old. My grandma said people usually get angry when someone tells the truth." That almost made Ethan smile. Almost. Before the accident, people called him confident, visionary, relentless. Now most days he simply felt tired. Very tired. The kind of exhaustion sleep couldn't fix. Maya opened the bucket. Inside were several folded cloths, a small bottle, a few dried leaves, the old photograph, and Grandma Ruth's notebook. Ethan's eyes lingered on the notebook. "You carry that everywhere?" "Every day. What if you lose it?" Maya immediately hugged it closer. "I won't." There was something protective in her voice, something emotional. Ethan recognized it, because he used to feel the same way about certain things, before life changed, before everything fell apart. The thought pulled him backward. 3 years, back to the afternoon that destroyed everything. The helicopter had been returning from Austin. A routine trip, a quick meeting. Nothing unusual. Then bad weather arrived. Suddenly, violently. Minutes later, Ethan's world became twisted metal, shattered glass, and months of hospitals. When he finally woke up, doctors delivered the news. His spinal injury was severe. Recovery was unlikely. The word unlikely eventually became impossible, then permanent. Eventually, everyone stopped discussing recovery altogether, including Ethan. He remembered the day his wife left, not because she didn't love him, because she couldn't watch him disappear. The man she married had been energetic, driven, passionate. After the accident, he became distant, angry, hopeless. She lasted nearly 2 years before moving out. His son Daniel blamed everyone. The doctors, the company, the lawyers, even Ethan himself. Now they barely spoke. Sometimes weeks passed without a phone call. The mansion became quiet. Too quiet. Staff moved carefully around him. Visitors became rare. Conversations became shorter. One by one, people drifted away. Only the money remained. Money filled rooms. Money paid doctors. Money bought wheelchairs. Money maintained mansions. But it couldn't fill silence. And there was a lot of silence. Maya's voice interrupted the memory. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan blinked. He hadn't realized he had drifted away. "Nothing. My grandma used to say people only stare like that when they're remembering something painful." He looked at her. "You know, for someone who's 9, you talk like you're 90. She smiled. "My grandma talked enough for both of us." That answer made him chuckle, a genuine chuckle. The first one in days, maybe weeks. Maya noticed. Her eyes brightened. "There it is? There what is?" A smile. Ethan rolled his eyes. "Don't get excited. You forgot how to do it." "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did." Again with the certainty. Again with the honesty. Yet strangely, he didn't mind. The conversation felt easy, natural, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. A sudden voice interrupted them. "Father?" Both turned. Daniel Caldwell stood near the patio entrance. Tall, well-dressed, expensive watch, expensive shoes, expensive frustration. The expression on his face darkened immediately when he saw Maya. "What is she doing here?" Maya lowered her eyes. She had seen that look before. The look people gave when they assumed things about her before learning her name. Ethan sighed. "She's visiting. She's trespassing." Daniel walked closer. His gaze shifted to the bucket, then the notebook, then Maya herself. "What exactly do you want?" The question landed heavily. Maya remained quiet. Daniel continued. "Money? No. Attention? No. Then why are you here?" Maya looked directly at him. "To help your father." Daniel laughed. A short, sharp laugh, the kind that carried no humor. "Help him?" He looked at Ethan. "Dad, this is ridiculous." Ethan didn't answer. That surprised Daniel. Normally, his father would have agreed. Instead, Ethan simply watched, waiting, listening. Maya stood. Her small figure looked even smaller beside Daniel's tailored suit. Yet somehow she didn't appear intimidated. "My grandma said people need help sometimes." Daniel crossed his arms. "My father has the best doctors in America." "Maybe." Daniel's jaw tightened. "But he's still sad." The words struck harder than Maya intended. Silence filled the patio. Daniel glanced toward Ethan. For a moment, guilt flashed across his face. Then it disappeared. "You're a child." "Yes." "You don't know anything about our lives." "No." "Then stop pretending you do." The cruelty wasn't extreme, but it was enough. Enough to make Maya look down. Enough to remind her she didn't belong here. Enough to reopen wounds she knew well. Poor neighborhood. Second-hand clothes. No parents. No money. People often saw those things before they saw her. Daniel turned back toward Ethan. "Dad, this needs to stop." Ethan's expression hardened. "Leave it alone." Daniel looked stunned. "What?" "I said leave it alone." The words carried the authority that once controlled billion-dollar deals. For the first time, Daniel stepped back. Maya quietly picked up her bucket. "I should go, no," Ethan said. She hesitated. Daniel stared at his father. "Dad, enough." The single word ended the argument. Daniel shook his head, then walked back into the mansion. The patio fell silent again. Maya sat down slowly. Her smile was gone. Ethan noticed. Don't mind him. It's okay. It isn't. She shrugged. I'm used to it. The answer hurt more than Ethan expected. Used to it. A 9-year-old should never have to say that. Not about being judged. Not about being dismissed. Not about feeling unwanted. Yet she said it so casually, as if it were normal. Ethan stared across the lawn. For the first time in years, something inside him shifted, very slightly. He knew what it felt like to be overlooked, to become invisible. Maybe not in the same way, but enough to understand. The afternoon sun drifted lower. Golden light spilled across the grass. Maya carefully opened Grandma Ruth's notebook. A loose piece of paper slipped free. Neither of them noticed. It landed beneath Ethan's wheelchair, half hidden, waiting. Because on that page was a name, a doctor's name, a name connected to Ethan's original diagnosis, a name Grandma Ruth had written down years ago. And before the week was over, that single forgotten piece of paper would begin unraveling a secret powerful people had spent years keeping buried. A secret that could explain why Ethan Caldwell lost 3 years of his life, and why Grandma Ruth had been searching for answers long before anyone realized the truth existed. The next afternoon arrived wrapped in warm Texas sunlight. The rain from earlier in the week had disappeared, leaving the sky bright and cloudless above Dallas. Maya climbed over the rear fence as she always did, bucket in hand, notebook tucked safely beneath her arm. The mansion looked less intimidating now, not because it had changed, because Ethan had. 3 days earlier he had been a stranger. Now he was becoming something else. Not family, not quite a friend, but no longer a stranger. When she reached the patio, she found Ethan already waiting. That surprised her. Most adults made children wait. Ethan was staring toward the fence before she even appeared. The moment he saw her, he quickly looked away, as if he didn't want her knowing he had been watching for her. Maya smiled. Hi, Mr. Caldwell. Hello, Maya. You were waiting. No, I wasn't. You were. Ethan sighed. You enjoy being right, don't you? Only when I'm right. That earned a reluctant smile. A small one, but real. Maya immediately noticed. Again. There it is. What? The smile. It wasn't a smile. It was. Ethan shook his head. For reasons he didn't understand, talking to Maya felt easier than talking to most adults. Maybe because she never treated him like a billionaire, or a patient, or a headline. She simply treated him like Ethan. Nothing more, nothing less. Maya set down her bucket. Today she moved differently, more confidently, more purposefully, almost like she had arrived to begin something important. Ethan noticed. What are you doing today? Maya unfolded the old white towel. My grandma called it waking up sleeping feet. Ethan leaned back. There it is again. What? That phrase? Maya smiled. My grandma used it all the time. She removed several small cloth packets from the bucket, then a jar filled with coarse salt, then a few dried herbs, rosemary, chamomile, mint. The scents immediately drifted into the warm afternoon air. Fresh, comforting, familiar. Oddly familiar. Ethan couldn't remember why. Maya poured warm water into a shallow basin she had brought inside the bucket. Steam rose softly. Where did you learn all this? My grandma. And she taught you when you were what? 6, 5. Ethan laughed. You remember all of it? I remember the important parts. There was no arrogance in her answer, only honesty. That was becoming her trademark. She gently placed the herbs into the water, then stirred them. The scent became stronger. Something about it reminded Ethan of childhood. Church dinners, family gatherings, summer evenings long forgotten. For a brief second, he wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a patient. He wasn't trapped inside a wheelchair. He was simply a boy remembering simpler days. Maya looked up. You remembered something. Ethan stared. How do you keep doing that? Doing what? Knowing. My grandma said people talk even when they don't use words. Ethan had no response. Maybe because part of him feared she was right. Maya rolled the basin closer. Can I? Ethan looked down at his motionless legs. 3 years. 3 years since anyone touched them outside a hospital. Physical therapists had, doctors had, specialists had. But that felt different. Clinical, mechanical. This felt personal, human. For reasons he couldn't explain, he nodded. Maya carefully removed his shoes, then his socks. She did it gently, respectfully, without pity. That mattered more than Ethan expected. People usually pitied him. He hated that. Maya never did. She lowered his feet into the warm water. The heat spread across skin that had felt disconnected from the world for years. Ethan closed his eyes. The sensation wasn't dramatic. It wasn't miraculous. But it felt pleasant. And pleasant had become rare. Maya began washing his feet slowly. Not like a nurse. Not like a therapist. Like someone caring for another human being. No rush. No performance. No expectation. The water rippled softly. Birds sang somewhere beyond the garden. The fountain murmured nearby. For several minutes, neither spoke. The quiet felt peaceful. Then Maya finally asked, "Do you miss her?" Ethan opened his eyes. The question struck instantly, painfully. He already knew who she meant. His wife, Claire, the woman who once loved him, the woman who couldn't stay, the woman he still thought about every day. Yes. The answer came before he could stop it. Maya nodded. My grandma said missing someone is proof they mattered. Ethan swallowed. The lump in his throat surprised him. Your grandma was very wise. She'd like you. That almost made him laugh. She never met me. She knew enough. Ethan looked away. The conversation settled into silence again. A few moments later, Maya gently pressed her thumb against the sole of his foot. Then another spot. Then another. Each movement seemed deliberate, almost practiced. Does this hurt? No. This? No. She moved higher, pressed again. Ethan frowned. For the briefest moment, something. Tiny. Almost impossible. A faint spark, like static electricity. Gone instantly. But there. Ethan's eyes widened. Maya froze. What? He looked down. His heart began beating faster. Do that again. She pressed the same spot. Once, twice, 3 times. There. Again. A faint tingling, barely noticeable, but real. Very real. Ethan stared. The world seemed to narrow around that tiny sensation. 3 years. Nothing. Then this. Not movement. Not recovery. Just a whisper. But enough to make him question everything. Maya's eyes lit up. You felt something. Ethan remained silent. His mind raced. It could be nothing. It could. It might be my imagination. It might. You don't sound worried. Maya smiled. My grandma always said sleeping things wake up slowly. For the first time, Ethan didn't dismiss the phrase. Because for the first time, he wanted it to be true. The sound of footsteps interrupted them. The mansion's head housekeeper appeared from the patio doors. Margaret Dawson. 70 years old. Sharp eyes. Perfect posture. She had worked for Ethan's family for nearly 3 decades. Margaret stopped when she saw Maya, then the basin, then Ethan's feet. What exactly is happening here? Maya immediately stood, nervous. Margaret crossed her arms. Sir? Ethan looked up. She's helping. Margaret blinked. Helping? That wasn't the answer she expected. She studied Maya carefully. The old clothes, the worn shoes, the bucket, the notebook. To her credit, she didn't judge. Not openly, but she clearly didn't understand. Should I call security? No. The answer came instantly. Margaret looked surprised. Ethan rarely answered that quickly anymore, especially about anything. Very well, sir. She left, but not before giving Maya one final, curious look. As the doors closed again, Maya slowly sat back down. You trust me? Ethan considered the question. Trust, a dangerous word, one he had stopped using years ago. I don't know, Maya nodded. That's okay. Why? Because trust grows. Simple. Again. Always simple. That was Maya's gift. She somehow made complicated things feel understandable. The afternoon drifted onward. The session ended shortly before sunset. Golden light stretched across the lawn. The city skyline shimmered in the distance. Maya dried Ethan's feet carefully with the old towel, then packed her things. As she lifted the basin, something caught Ethan's attention. A folded sheet of paper, partially sticking out from Grandma Ruth's notebook. The same loose page that had fallen beneath his wheelchair the day before, without Maya noticing. Ethan bent down, carefully picked it up. The paper was old, yellowed, fragile, and at the very top was a handwritten name. Dr. Victor Langford. The name hit Ethan instantly. His first neurologist. The doctor who had delivered the devastating diagnosis after the accident. Why would Grandma Ruth write down his name? More importantly, why were there question marks beside it? And why had she written a single sentence beneath it? Something about this diagnosis doesn't fit. Ethan stared at the page. A chill ran through him despite the Texas heat. Because for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't wondering whether he could walk again. He was wondering whether someone had lied to him. And somewhere across Dallas, another person was about to discover that Ethan Caldwell had started asking questions. Questions certain powerful people desperately hoped would never be asked. The following morning, Ethan sat alone in his study before sunrise. The mansion was silent. The city beyond his windows still slept beneath a blanket of darkness. Yet Ethan had been awake for hours. The old page from Grandma Ruth's notebook rested on his desk. Beside it sat several folders containing medical records from the past 3 years. Dozens of appointments. Hundreds of tests. Thousands of pages. And one name. Dr. Victor Langford. Ethan stared at it again. The same doctor who had looked him in the eye after the accident. The same doctor who had told him recovery was impossible. Permanent. Final. Over. At the time, Ethan had believed him. Everyone had. Now he wasn't so sure. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Come in. The door opened. His attorney, Charles Whitmore, stepped inside. Charles had worked for Ethan nearly 15 years. Sharp suit, sharp mind, sharp instincts. The kind of man who noticed trouble before it arrived. Unfortunately, trouble had already arrived, and her name was Maya Brooks. Charles took one look at the page on Ethan's desk. "What are you doing?" Ethan leaned back. "Reviewing old records." Charles frowned. "Why?" "Because I have questions." "About?" Ethan slid the paper across the desk. Charles read it. His expression changed instantly. A tiny reaction, barely visible. But Ethan caught it. The former billionaire hadn't built an empire by missing details. "You recognize it?" Charles carefully set the page down. "It's nothing. That's not what your face says." Charles sighed. "Where did you get this?" "A friend." "A friend?" Ethan almost laughed. A week ago he would have called Maya a trespassing stranger. Now he had used the word friend without thinking. Charles noticed. His concern deepened. "Does this have something to do with that little girl?" The room grew quiet. Ethan didn't answer. That answer was enough. Charles shook his head. "Ethan, this needs to stop." "There it is." "There what is?" "The same thing Daniel keeps saying." "Because Daniel is right." Ethan's jaw tightened. Charles continued. "You're letting a child influence major decisions. She's asking questions. She's a 9-year-old, and nobody else asked them." Charles rubbed his forehead. The conversation wasn't going the way he expected. He changed tactics. "You know people are talking." Ethan looked up. "What people?" "Everyone." Charles crossed his arms. "Board members, investors, reporters, employees." The silence became uncomfortable. Then Charles delivered the final blow. "There's a video." Ethan frowned. "A video?" Charles opened his phone, tapped the screen, turned it around. Ethan stared. His stomach dropped. Someone had filmed Maya washing his feet. The clip wasn't long. 30 seconds. Maybe less. Yet somehow it looked far worse than reality. A billionaire in a wheelchair. A poor little girl kneeling before him. A bucket. Herbs. Water. The footage ended with Maya smiling. The internet had done the rest. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. Some mocked Ethan. Others mocked Maya. Many mocked both. The headlines were even worse. "Billionaire trusts street child over doctor's tech." "Mogul turns to folk healing." Has Ethan Caldwell lost his mind? Ethan felt anger rise inside him. Not because people were mocking him, because they were mocking Maya. A child. A kind child. One who had never asked for anything. Charles carefully studied his reaction. "This is becoming a problem." "For who? For everyone?" Ethan looked away. The answer told him everything. This wasn't about protecting him. This was about protecting reputations, protecting appearances, protecting the image people preferred. The image of a powerful man who accepted defeat quietly, not one who started asking uncomfortable questions. Meanwhile, several miles away, Maya had no idea any of this was happening. She spent her afternoon exactly the way she spent most afternoons, helping. The community kitchen bustled with activity. Volunteers moved between tables. Children laughed. Pots clattered. The smell of soup filled the air. Maya carried trays between tables and helped an elderly veteran find a seat. Then she swept the floor. Then she helped unload donated groceries. Nobody paid her. Nobody had to ask. That was simply Maya. Near sunset, she finally sat down outside with a sandwich and a bottle of water. Mr. Lewis stepped outside and joined her. The old volunteer looked troubled. "Maya." "Yes?" "You've been online recently?" She laughed. We can't afford internet. Good point. He hesitated, then handed her his phone. Maya looked. The video appeared instantly. Her smile vanished. She watched herself, watched the comments, the jokes, the insults, the assumptions. Little scammer, attention seeker, future con artist, using a disabled man for fame. Maya's eyes lowered. Mr. Lewis immediately regretted showing her. I'm sorry. She handed the phone back. It's okay. But it wasn't, and they both knew it. For several seconds, neither spoke. Traffic rolled by nearby. A city bus hissed to a stop. Neon lights flickered to life across the street. Finally, Mr. Lewis said quietly, People can be cruel. Maya nodded. My grandma said people are usually afraid of things they don't understand. Your grandma sounds smart. She was. Her voice cracked slightly. Just enough. The pain never truly left. The loss never truly disappeared. Maya stood, picked up her bucket. It's time. Time for what? Mr. Caldwell. Despite everything, despite the comments, despite the ridicule, despite the humiliation, she was still going, because helping Ethan had never been about attention. Across Dallas, Ethan was waiting. Again. The moment Maya entered the backyard, he noticed something was wrong. Her smile looked smaller, her shoulders lower. Even the way she walked seemed heavier. What happened? Maya forced a shrug. Nothing. Ethan didn't believe her. Neither did she. He held up his phone. I saw the video. That stopped her. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Maya sat down. I didn't know, I know. They think I'm lying, I know. They think I want money. Ethan's jaw tightened. I know. The words hung in the air. Painful. Unfair. True. Maya stared at the ground. For the first time since they'd met, she looked like what she actually was. A little girl. A little girl carrying far too much. They laughed at Grandma, too. Ethan looked over. What do you mean? When she helped people. Maya smiled sadly. Some people called her crazy. The statement hit Ethan harder than expected, because suddenly he understood. This wasn't new for Maya. Being judged, being underestimated, being dismissed. It was her normal, and somehow she kept helping anyway. The realization left him speechless. Just then, the patio doors burst open. Daniel stormed outside, phone in hand, fury written across his face. Dad, this has gone far enough. Maya immediately stiffened. Daniel pointed at the screen. Do you have any idea what's happening? Yes. Our stock dropped almost 3% today. Ethan blinked. That's what you're worried about? Of course I'm worried. Daniel's voice rose. The board is worried. The media is watching. Everyone thinks you've lost control. Maya quietly lowered her eyes. Daniel noticed, and somehow became even angrier. Look at this. He held the phone toward her. More comments, more ridicule, more cruelty. You see what this is causing? Maya stood slowly. I should leave. No. The word came from Ethan. Firm, immediate. Daniel stared. Dad. No. Ethan's voice carried a force Daniel hadn't heard in years. The force that once commanded boardrooms. The force that built an empire. For the first time, Daniel looked uncertain. Ethan turned toward Maya. Sit down. She hesitated, then obeyed. Daniel shook his head. You're choosing her over your own family? The accusation lingered, heavy, dangerous. Ethan's expression hardened. No. He paused. I'm choosing kindness over fear. Silence. Absolute silence. Daniel looked stunned. So did Maya. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally, Daniel turned and walked back into the mansion. The patio door slammed behind him. The sound echoed across the backyard. Maya stared after him. He hates me. No. Ethan sighed. He's scared. Of me? Of losing me? That answer changed everything. The anger disappeared from Maya's face. Only sadness remained. Because suddenly she understood. Daniel wasn't protecting money. He was protecting his father. The wrong way. But still protecting him. The sun began setting. Golden light painted the sky. Maya quietly packed her bucket. Before leaving, she placed the old white towel beside Ethan's chair. You forgot this. No. She smiled gently. I brought it for you. Ethan frowned. Why? Because everybody needs something clean to hold on to when the world gets messy. The answer stayed with him long after she disappeared beyond the fence. That night, the video spread even further. More reporters called. More investors complained. More board members panicked. The whole world seemed determined to laugh. But while millions focused on a little girl carrying an old bucket, nobody noticed something far more important. Someone had begun deleting records connected to Dr. Victor Langford. Someone was cleaning up old files. Someone was afraid. And fear only appears when the truth is getting close. The next day felt different. Not because the weather had changed, not because the headlines had disappeared, but because something invisible had shifted. For the first time in years, Ethan Caldwell wasn't simply surviving. He was paying attention. The morning sun poured through the massive windows of his study, casting long beams of light across stacks of medical records. Every file he reviewed raised more questions. Records were missing. Notes had vanished. Several digital entries appeared to have been edited months after his diagnosis. The deeper he looked, the stranger everything became. By noon, frustration settled over him like a heavy blanket. Nothing made sense. And the more he searched, the more resistance he encountered. Charles avoided certain questions. Board members suddenly became difficult to reach. Even Dr. Victor Langford's office claimed some records could no longer be located. Lost, misfiled, unavailable. The excuses sounded rehearsed. Ethan closed another folder and stared out the window. Somewhere beyond the manicured lawns and luxury neighborhoods, Maya was probably helping someone. She always seemed to be helping someone. The thought made him smile. A small smile. One he didn't notice. But Margaret did. The elderly housekeeper paused while placing a tray beside him. You smile more these days. Ethan looked up. Do I? A little. He almost denied it, then stopped. Because she was right. The realization felt strange. Margaret glanced toward the backyard. The little girl has done more for this house in a week than most people have done in years. Ethan looked down at the old towel folded neatly beside his chair. He knew exactly what she meant. That afternoon, Maya never arrived. 3 o'clock passed, then 4, then 5. The empty backyard remained still. Ethan checked the fence more times than he wanted to admit. No yellow raincoat, no bucket, no Maya. A strange disappointment settled inside him. Finally, he grabbed his phone, then stopped. He didn't even have her number. The realization felt ridiculous. A billionaire with access to nearly anyone in the world, and he couldn't contact one 9-year-old girl. As evening approached, Ethan found himself restless. By sunset, he made a decision. Get the SUV ready, The driver blinked. "Sir, I want to go out." The request surprised everyone. Ethan rarely left the property unless absolutely necessary. Yet 30 minutes later, the black SUV rolled through downtown Dallas. Neon lights flickered against wet pavement. Restaurants buzzed with evening crowds. Traffic hummed through the city. The farther they drove from Ethan's neighborhood, the more the city changed. Luxury storefronts became pawnshops. High-rise buildings became apartment complexes. Bright office towers gave way to aging brick buildings and crowded bus stops. Ethan stared through the window. This was Maya's world, a world most people like him rarely visited. Eventually, the vehicle stopped near the community kitchen. The building was closing. Volunteers stacked chairs inside. The parking lot sat mostly empty. Ethan lowered the window. A familiar voice drifted through the evening air. He turned. And there she was. Not at home. Not playing. Not resting. Working. Maya stood beside an elderly homeless man near a bus shelter. The old man sat on a bench, wincing as he removed one worn shoe. Without hesitation, Maya knelt, the same way she knelt beside Ethan, the same patience, the same gentleness, the same kindness. She opened her bucket, pulled out a clean cloth, then carefully wrapped the man's injured foot. The old man looked embarrassed. "You don't have to do this." "I know." Her answer was immediate, simple, familiar. "But I want to." The old man's eyes filled with tears. Maya continued working, never looking around, never checking who was watching, never expecting anything. No cameras, no audience, no reward, only kindness, pure and uncomplicated. For several moments, Ethan simply stared. Something tightened in his chest, not sadness, not guilt, something deeper. The realization that Maya treated a homeless stranger exactly the same way she treated a billionaire, because status meant nothing to her. Money meant nothing to her. People mattered. Only people. The old man reached into his pocket and pulled out a few crumpled bills. "Please." Maya shook her head. "No." "You helped me. My grandma said helping isn't something you sell." The old man lowered the money. "You remind me of someone." Maya smiled. "I get that a lot," then couldn't stop watching. Every cynical belief he carried seemed weaker tonight. For years, he'd assumed kindness always came with conditions. Business taught him that. Life reinforced it. Everything had a price. Everything came with expectations. Everything demanded something in return. Except Maya. She helped because helping felt right. Nothing more. Nothing less. The driver quietly spoke from the front seat. "Would you like me to bring her over, sir?" Ethan shook his head. "No." "Should we leave?" Again, Ethan shook his head. He continued watching. Maya sat beside the old man afterward. The two shared a sandwich, half for him, half for her. Neither seemed to notice the luxury SUV parked across the street. The scene felt strangely beautiful, almost unreal. Eventually, the old man boarded a bus. Maya waved goodbye. Then she remained alone beneath the yellow glow of the bus stop. The city moved around her. Cars passed. People hurried home. Neon signs buzzed overhead. Yet Maya sat quietly, with Grandma Ruth's notebook in her lap. She looked tired, much more tired than usual. For the first time, Ethan noticed the loneliness. The kind children tried to hide. The kind adults often missed. She sat there reading the notebook as if it were the last connection she had left to someone she loved. And suddenly, Ethan understood something. Maya wasn't helping people because she was strong. She was helping people because she knew what it felt like to hurt. The realization struck him harder than any medical report. For years, he had been surrounded by professionals trying to fix his body. Yet a little girl carrying grief inside her heart had somehow begun healing something much deeper: his spirit. The thought lingered as Maya finally stood. She carefully packed away the notebook, then started walking home alone. No parent waiting, no car, no one coming to get her. Just a little girl carrying a bucket through the evening streets of Dallas. Ethan watched until she disappeared around the corner. Only then did he speak. "Take me home." The SUV pulled away, but the image stayed with him. A child helping strangers in the dark, expecting nothing. As the vehicle crossed the city, Ethan stared out the window. For the first time since the accident, he wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking about Maya, about her grandmother, about the notebook, about the mysterious warning written beside Dr. Langford's name, and about a question that suddenly felt impossible to ignore. Why had Grandma Ruth been investigating his diagnosis years before Maya ever met him? Back at the mansion, another surprise was waiting. Margaret handed him a sealed envelope that had arrived by courier. No return address. No sender. Nothing. Inside was a single photocopied document, an insurance memo, dated 3 years earlier. Across the top was a sentence highlighted in yellow. Claim costs reduced if recovery possibility is classified as 0. Beneath the sentence appeared several signatures, including one name Ethan recognized instantly: Dr. Victor Langford. Ethan's blood ran cold. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about a mistake anymore. It looked very much like someone had wanted him to believe he would never walk again. And somewhere in Dallas, someone had just taken the first real step toward exposing the truth. Ethan barely slept that night. The insurance memo remained on his desk long after midnight. The highlighted sentence seemed to glow beneath the lamp. Claim costs reduced if recovery possibility is classified as 0. He read it again, then again. Every time the same question returned. Why? Why would anyone want to erase even the smallest possibility of recovery? Money. The answer was obvious. Money had motivated people to do worse things than this. Yet somehow that realization felt colder than anything he had experienced since the accident. Because for 3 years he had trusted the diagnosis. He had trusted the experts. He had trusted the system. And now that trust was beginning to crack. By sunrise, Ethan had made a decision. He would get answers. Not next month, not next year, now. Meanwhile, on the other side of Dallas, Maya was already awake. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of her small apartment. The place felt quiet. Too quiet. Ever since Grandma Ruth passed away, mornings felt different. The apartment no longer carried the smell of herbal tea. No old gospel music drifted from the kitchen radio. No warm voice called her name. Only silence remained. Maya sat at the small table and opened the notebook. The same notebook she carried everywhere. The same notebook people mocked. The same notebook Grandma Ruth had protected for decades. As she turned the pages, she found herself stopping once again at Ethan Caldwell's section. Several pages were filled with observations. Dates, names, questions. Most of it made little sense to a 9-year-old. But one thing stood out. Again. The repeated appearance of Dr. Victor Langford's name. Grandma Ruth had written it multiple times, sometimes underlined, sometimes circled, sometimes followed by question marks. Maya frowned. Something about it bothered her. She couldn't explain why. Only that Grandma Ruth rarely wrote the same name more than once unless it mattered. Very much. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Jenkins stood outside the apartment carrying a casserole dish. "I made too much food again." Maya smiled. The older woman always claimed she cooked too much. The truth was she worried about Maya eating alone. Thank you. Mrs. Jenkins stepped inside. Her eyes immediately found the notebook. Still reading that thing? Maya nodded. I think Grandma was trying to tell me something. The old woman sat down slowly. What kind of something? Maya hesitated, then told her about Ethan, about the photograph, about the notebook, about the doctor. Mrs. Jenkins listened carefully. When Maya finished, the old woman remained quiet for several seconds. Then she said something unexpected. Your grandmother never trusted that doctor. Maya froze. What? Mrs. Jenkins nodded. I remember. You do? Years ago. The old woman stared toward the window, remembering. Ruth used to visit a rehabilitation center where some of Ethan Caldwell's former employees volunteered. Maya listened closely. One day she came home upset. Why? Because she thought something didn't add up. A chill ran through Maya. The exact same words written inside the notebook. Something doesn't fit. Mrs. Jenkins continued. She never told me details, but she kept asking questions. What questions? The kind powerful people don't like. The room suddenly felt smaller. Maya looked back at the notebook. For the first time, she realized Grandma Ruth hadn't simply collected stories. She had been investigating something. Something important. Something unfinished. That afternoon, Maya headed to Ethan's mansion carrying more questions than answers. The city seemed louder than usual. Buses hissed at corners. Traffic lights blinked. Sirens echoed somewhere downtown. Everything felt normal, yet Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening. When she reached the mansion, Ethan was already waiting. Not outside. Inside. In the study. Medical records covered every surface. Folders. Documents. Printed emails. Notes. The room looked more like a detective's office than a billionaire's home. Maya stepped inside. Wow. Ethan looked up. His eyes appeared tired, but different, focused, determined. Hi. What happened here? Ethan gestured around the room. I'm trying to figure out whether I've been lied to. The words hung heavily between them. Maya slowly approached. Then something caught her attention. A medical chart lying open near the edge of the desk. Symbols, diagrams, scans. She didn't understand most of it. Yet one image immediately triggered a memory. Her eyes widened. No way. Ethan looked up. What? Maya grabbed the notebook, flipped pages rapidly, page after page, until she found it. A hand-drawn sketch. Old. Faded. But nearly identical. Her heart started racing. Ethan watched. What is it? Maya placed the notebook beside the chart. Both images looked remarkably similar. What am I looking at? Maya pointed. This. Ethan leaned closer. I don't understand. My grandma called it a sleeping nerve. Ethan blinked. A what? A sleeping nerve. Maya, that's not a medical term. I know, but look. She pointed again. The pattern. The similarity was undeniable. Even Ethan could see it. Maya flipped through more pages, then found a paragraph written entirely in Grandma Ruth's handwriting. She read aloud. Sometimes a nerve appears silent even when it is not dead. Sometimes the connection is hidden. If doctors stop looking too early, they may miss what is still alive. The room fell silent. Ethan stared. His pulse quickened. Because for the first time, Grandma Ruth's notes sounded less like folk wisdom and more like a warning written years before his accident, a warning connected to the exact same doctor now appearing in multiple places. Neither of them spoke. Then Ethan reached for the phone. "I'm getting a second opinion." Maya smiled. A real smile. The kind she hadn't worn in days. But the moment lasted only seconds. A voice suddenly interrupted from the doorway. "You're doing what?" "Daniel." He stood there holding a tablet, his expression dark, his patience gone. Ethan sighed. "Daniel, no." Daniel entered the room. "This has gone far enough." He pointed directly at Maya. "She's a child." Maya lowered her eyes. Daniel continued. "You're making medical decisions based on a notebook. It's more than that." "No, it isn't." His voice echoed through the room. "It's ridiculous." Maya felt the familiar sting, the same one she experienced every time people dismissed her before listening. Daniel noticed the notebook, then laughed. "Seriously?" The sound hurt more than Maya expected, because part of her still wanted people to believe, not in magic, not in miracles, just in Grandma Ruth, in her wisdom, in her goodness, in the years she spent helping people. Daniel shook his head. "Do you realize how crazy this looks?" Ethan's face hardened. "No. It looks like a desperate man being manipulated." Silence. The words landed heavily. Maya took a step backward. Daniel immediately regretted it, but pride kept him moving forward. Then Ethan spoke, slowly, carefully, deliberately. "You know what's interesting?" Daniel frowned. "What?" "For 3 years, nobody questioned the diagnosis." The room went quiet. Ethan continued. "Not one person." "Dad." "Not one." His voice grew stronger. "Then a little girl asks one question." He pointed at the notebook. "One question. And suddenly everyone wants her to stop asking." Daniel didn't answer. Because deep down, he knew his father was right. The room remained silent. Finally, Maya quietly picked up her bucket. "I should go." Ethan looked at her, no. Maya hesitated, then smiled softly. "Tomorrow." Ethan nodded. "Tomorrow." She turned toward the door, but before leaving, she glanced once more at the medical chart, and once more at Grandma Ruth's notes. The two images sat side by side, almost identical, almost impossible. And somewhere deep inside, Maya felt certain of one thing. Grandma Ruth had known something, something important, something hidden, something that powerful people had spent years trying to bury. And now, for the first time, the truth was beginning to surface, whether they liked it or not. 3 days later, Ethan Caldwell sat inside one of the most respected neurological clinics in Texas. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The waiting room smelled faintly of coffee and antiseptic. Patients flipped through magazines. Televisions murmured quietly overhead. But Ethan noticed none of it. His attention remained fixed on the folder resting in his lap. Inside were copies of old scans, medical reports, insurance documents, and several pages from Grandma Ruth's notebook. Across from him sat Maya. Her bucket rested beside her chair. The old notebook remained tucked beneath her arm. She looked small in the enormous room, yet somehow she seemed completely unafraid. "You nervous?" Ethan asked. "A little. Me too." That surprised her. "Billionaires get nervous? More often than you'd think." Maya smiled. The clinic door opened. A woman in her early 50s stepped into the waiting room. Confident, professional, warm eyes. "Mr. Caldwell?" Ethan looked up. "I'm Dr. Samantha Reeves." The second opinion had finally arrived. An hour later, Ethan sat inside an examination room while Dr. Reeves studied his records. Silence filled the room. Occasionally she flipped another page, then another, then another. The deeper she looked, the more serious her expression became. Finally, she placed the file down. What exactly made you seek another evaluation? Ethan glanced toward Maya. The doctor followed his gaze. Her eyes softened. You can tell me. Ethan took a breath, then told her everything. The notebook, the photograph, the questions, the strange sensation returning to his feet, the insurance memo, the missing records. Everything. Dr. Reeves listened carefully, never interrupting, never dismissing him. When he finished, she remained quiet for several moments. Then she asked a single question. May I see the original scans? Ethan nodded. The scans appeared on a nearby screen. Large images filled the room. Black, white, gray. Complex patterns only specialists truly understood. Dr. Reeves studied them carefully. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. The silence became unbearable. Finally, she leaned closer to the monitor, then frowned, then leaned even closer. Ethan immediately noticed. What is it? The doctor didn't answer. She continued examining the images. Eventually, she pulled up newer scans for comparison. Her eyes widened slightly. A reaction so small most people would have missed it. Ethan didn't. What? The doctor slowly turned toward him. Mr. Caldwell. Her voice had changed. There is something here I don't understand. The room froze. Maya gripped the notebook tighter. Ethan's pulse quickened. What does that mean? Dr. Reeves hesitated, choosing her words carefully. It means I need to run additional tests. Why? Because some of what I'm seeing doesn't match your original diagnosis. The air seemed to disappear from the room. Ethan stared. 3 years. 3 years of hopelessness. 3 years of believing his future was gone. 3 years. What exactly are you saying? Dr. Reeves folded her hands. I'm saying your condition may not have been as absolute as you were told. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Even the rain outside seemed quieter. Maya looked at Ethan. His face had gone pale. Not from fear, from disbelief. For years, he had built his life around one certainty. Now that certainty was collapsing. The next several hours became a blur of tests, reflex examinations, sensitivity measurements, neurological evaluations. Every result added another layer of confusion. By evening, Dr. Reeves called Ethan into her office. Only him. Maya waited outside, watching rain slide down the glass. Her heart pounded, because she already knew. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Inside the office, Dr. Reeves closed the door, then sat across from Ethan. For a long moment, she simply looked at him. Finally, she spoke. Mr. Caldwell, I need you to understand something. Ethan remained silent. The injury was real. He nodded. I know you were seriously hurt. Again, he nodded. But the word hung in the air, heavy, dangerous. But what? Dr. Reeves slid several images across the desk. Based on everything I've reviewed, I do not believe your recovery potential was ever 0. The room became completely silent. Ethan felt his heartbeat inside his ears. What? There were signs. She pointed at the scans. Small signs. Rare signs, but signs nonetheless. His breathing slowed, then stopped. Almost. For 3 years, every specialist had told him the same thing. Impossible. Permanent. Finished. Now one doctor had shattered all of it with a single sentence. There was a chance? A small one. How small? No one can say. The doctor's expression darkened. But it was not zero. Ethan stared at the scans. His hands trembled. Not zero. The words echoed endlessly. Not zero. Not impossible. Not finished. Not hopeless. Not zero. 3 years. 3 years stolen by those 2 words. What would have happened if therapy had started differently? Dr. Reeves remained silent. That silence answered everything. Ethan closed his eyes. A wave of emotion crashed through him. Grief, anger, regret, shock. 3 years. 3 years he would never get back. Outside the office, Maya sat quietly. The door eventually opened. Ethan emerged. His face looked different. She immediately stood. What happened? For several seconds he couldn't speak. Then finally he whispered, "You were right." Maya blinked. "What?" "You..." His voice cracked. "You and your grandma." The little girl stared. Ethan knelt as far as his wheelchair allowed, then placed a trembling hand over hers. The door was never completely closed. Maya didn't fully understand, but she understood enough, and for the first time since meeting Ethan, tears appeared in his eyes. Not tears of defeat, not tears of hopelessness. Something else. Relief, the possibility of hope. Yet the story wasn't over, not even close. Because later that night, another discovery arrived. A private investigator Ethan hired finally returned a report. The file contained dozens of pages, emails, internal communications, financial documents, and one devastating connection. Dr. Victor Langford had served as a paid consultant for North Star Insurance, the same company responsible for Ethan's accident settlement, the same company mentioned in the insurance memo, the same company that would have saved millions if Ethan never pursued long-term recovery treatment. Ethan read the report twice, then a third time. Each page deepened the horror. The conflict of interest had never been disclosed. Not once. Not ever. Someone had hidden it. Someone had protected it. Someone had benefited. The next morning, national news exploded. Not because Ethan spoke publicly, because someone leaked documents, anonymous sources, internal records, questions, doubts. Suddenly, reporters were investigating. Law firms were calling. Board members were panicking. North Star Insurance issued statements, then revised those statements, then stopped answering questions altogether. The story was growing. Fast. Too fast. Meanwhile, Maya remained completely unaware of the storm she had helped create. She still showed up carrying her bucket, still helped strangers, still visited the community kitchen, still treated people the same way. But now something else had changed. When she arrived at Ethan's mansion that afternoon, he was waiting in the garden. The moment she approached, he lifted one hand. "Watch." Maya froze. Ethan closed his eyes, focused, concentrated. Then, his big toe moved, barely, almost invisible, yet undeniably real. Maya gasped. The bucket nearly slipped from her hands, again. The toe moved, tiny, weak, but real. Ethan stared at his foot, almost afraid to believe it. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Maya smiled. The biggest smile yet. "I told you." Ethan laughed. The sound echoed across the yard. For the first time in years, it sounded alive. But while celebration filled the garden, across Dallas, several very nervous executives sat inside a boardroom staring at the same news reports, and one of them finally asked the question everyone feared. Who found the girl? because they were beginning to realize something terrifying. The biggest threat to their secret wasn't a billionaire. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a doctor. It was a little black girl carrying an old bucket and a dead grandmother's notebook. And she had just changed everything. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan Caldwell woke up excited. The feeling was so unfamiliar that it took him several minutes to recognize it. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of his bedroom. The Dallas skyline shimmered in the distance. Birds chirped outside. And Ethan was smiling. Actually smiling. Not because the scandal surrounding North Star Insurance was growing. Not because lawyers were suddenly calling. Not because reporters had begun digging into Dr. Victor Langford's history. None of that mattered this morning. What mattered was one tiny movement. One toe. One signal. One undeniable reminder that hope was no longer a fantasy. It was real. His physical therapy sessions intensified immediately. Dr. Reeves assembled a specialized rehabilitation team. Exercises became longer, harder, more exhausting. Every muscle felt like it was waking from a 3-year sleep. Some days Ethan hated it. Some days he wanted to quit. But every afternoon, Maya arrived carrying her bucket, and somehow she always knew exactly what to say. "Your feet are grumpy today." Ethan laughed. "They're not grumpy. They are. No, they're not. They are." The old familiar argument made both of them smile. The therapists often paused to watch, not because of Maya's techniques, because of her effect. Nobody had seen Ethan like this before. More importantly, neither had Ethan. Weeks passed. The media storm surrounding the insurance company continued to grow. Investigations expanded. Former employees came forward. Whistleblowers appeared. Questions multiplied. Meanwhile, Ethan focused on something far more important: learning to stand again. The first attempt happened inside a private rehabilitation room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Dallas. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and fresh coffee. Parallel bars stretched across the center. Maya stood nearby. Dr. Reeves watched carefully. 2 therapists positioned themselves on either sit-down. Ethan gripped the bars. His palms sweated. His heart pounded. "You ready?" Dr. Reeves asked. "No." Everyone laughed, including Ethan. Then he took a breath and pushed upward. Pain shot through his legs. Not dangerous pain, the pain of muscles trying to remember, the pain of effort, the pain of possibility. Slowly, very slowly. His body rose, a few inches, then more. Then, he was standing, not independently, not steadily, but standing. The room fell silent. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Ethan stared at the floor beneath him. His eyes widened. 3 years. 3 years since he had seen the world from this height. The moment felt surreal, almost sacred. Then Maya began clapping. Immediately. Loudly, proudly, like he had just won an Olympic medal. The therapists joined her. Dr. Reeves smiled, and Ethan laughed through tears he couldn't stop. For the first time since the accident, he stood. That night, he sat alone in the mansion's garden, the same garden where Maya first appeared, the same garden where everything changed. The sunset painted the sky gold and orange. Warm wind rustled the trees. Somewhere nearby, a fountain quietly splashed. Ethan looked toward the fence, remembering. The bucket, the photograph, the impossible promise. He almost called security that day. The thought still haunted him. How close he came to making the biggest mistake of his life. A movement caught his attention. Maya climbing over the fence. Again. Just as she always did. Some things never changed, and Ethan was grateful for that. She landed softly, smiled, then immediately noticed something. "You stood today." Ethan blinked. "How did you know? You look taller." He laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. "You make no sense. My grandma said healing changes people's faces before it changes their bodies." Ethan shook his head. But deep down he knew she was right. Healing had already begun long before his toe moved, long before he stood, long before the doctors admitted their mistakes. It started the day someone treated him like a person instead of a diagnosis. The weeks that followed brought even more progress. A twitch became movement. Movement became control. Control became strength. Strength became possibility. Every victory felt small, until suddenly it wasn't. One afternoon, Ethan managed to shift weight onto both legs. The next week, he took a tiny assisted step. Then another. Then another. The world seemed brighter. Food tasted better. Conversations lasted longer. Even Daniel noticed. Their relationship slowly began repairing itself. Not perfectly, but honestly. One evening, father and son sat together in the library, something they hadn't done in years. Daniel stared into his coffee. "I was wrong." Ethan looked up. "What?" "About Maya." Silence. Daniel sighed. "I thought she was taking advantage of you." "And now?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Now I think she saved you." Ethan looked toward the garden. "She did." Neither man said anything afterward. They didn't need to. Some truths spoke for themselves. Then, just when everything seemed to be improving, Maya disappeared. The first day, Ethan wasn't worried. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she was helping someone. Maybe she'd simply missed the bus. The second day felt stranger. The fence remained empty. The garden remained quiet. No yellow raincoat. No bucket. No smile. The third day brought concern. Ethan called the community kitchen. Nobody had seen her. Mrs. Jenkins hadn't seen her either. Neither had Mr. Lewis. By the fourth day, worry became fear. Something was wrong. Very wrong. That afternoon, Ethan sat in physical therapy unable to focus. His concentration drifted constantly. His progress stalled. Dr. Reeves noticed immediately. "You should go find her." Ethan looked up. "What?" "You won't focus until you do." She smiled. "And frankly, neither will I." That evening, Ethan launched a search. Private investigators, security teams, contacts, anyone who could help. At first they found nothing. Then a lead appeared. A city housing record. A notice. A closure order. An address. The government-assisted apartment complex where Maya lived had been condemned after structural damage was discovered. Residents were relocated. Some temporarily. Some permanently. The information hit Ethan like a punch. Nobody had told him. Nobody had known. The next morning, he personally visited the property. The neighborhood looked different without Maya. Quieter, somehow. Police tape stretched across parts of the building. Windows were boarded. Families loaded belongings into cars. Children carried backpacks through parking lots. Lives uprooted overnight. Ethan stared at the empty apartment building. A terrible feeling settled inside him. Where would a 9-year-old girl go? Especially one with no parents. The answer arrived several hours later. One of his investigators located her. A state-run youth assistance center on the edge of the city. Ethan didn't wait. By sunset, his SUV rolled into the parking lot. The building looked clean, safe, well-maintained. Yet something about it felt cold, temporary. The kind of place people ended up when life stopped giving them choices. Inside, a social worker greeted him, then led him down a quiet hallway. Children's artwork covered the walls, colorful drawings, crayon rainbows, paper stars, tiny reminders that hope still existed. Finally, they reached a common room, and there she was, sitting alone beside a window, bucket at her feet, notebook in her lap, watching the sunset, waiting. The sight shattered something inside Ethan, because for the first time since meeting her, Maya looked small, not brave, not determined, not fearless, just small. A little girl carrying too much. She looked up, saw him, and smiled. The same smile, the same kindness. Even now, even here. Ethan. He swallowed hard. Hi, kid. Maya carefully closed the notebook. What are you doing here? The answer came instantly. The only answer possible. I came looking for you. And for the first time since Grandma Ruth died. Tears filled Maya's eyes. She tried to blink them away, tried to smile, tried to pretend everything was fine. But she couldn't, not this time. The social worker quietly stepped away, giving them privacy. The room grew silent. Outside the window, the last orange streaks of sunset faded behind the Dallas skyline. Children laughed somewhere down the hall. A television played softly in another room. Yet for Maya, everything felt distant, unreal. Ethan slowly rolled closer. His voice became gentle, the kind of gentle that only comes from someone who finally understands pain. Why didn't you tell me? Maya stared at the notebook in her lap. I didn't want you to worry. The answer hit Ethan harder than he expected. She was 9 years old. 9. And somehow she was protecting him. Even now. Even after losing her home. Even after being moved into a shelter. Even after carrying burdens most adults struggled to bear. Ethan swallowed. Maya. She looked up. I knew you were busy. Busy. The doctors. The lawyers. The news people. She shrugged. You had important things. Ethan closed his eyes. For years, he had surrounded himself with executives, investors, consultants, and advisors, people who constantly demanded things, requested things, expected things. And here sat the only person who had ever truly helped him, asking for nothing, not even when she needed help herself. His chest tightened. What happened? Maya looked toward the window. The building got closed. When? 4 days ago. And nobody called me? She smiled sadly. They don't know you. The truth of that statement hurt. Nobody knew, because Maya had never told anyone. Not the community kitchen, not Ethan, not even Mrs. Jenkins. The social worker eventually returned carrying a file. Mr. Caldwell. Ethan turned. Yes? The woman hesitated, then sat down. Maya has been handling everything remarkably well. The compliment sounded more heartbreaking than comforting. Handling everything. A child shouldn't have to handle everything. Where are her parents? Ethan asked quietly. The social worker's expression softened. There aren't any. The answer settled heavily over the room. Ethan had suspected. Now he knew. Her mother had left years ago. Her father was never part of her life. Grandma Ruth had raised her alone. And after Ruth passed away, Maya had simply kept going, the way children sometimes do when they don't have another choice. The social worker opened the file. There are some extended family contacts we're trying to locate. Maya looked down. The reaction didn't escape Ethan. Do you know them? Maya shook her head. Not really. The woman continued. Until arrangements are finalized, she'll remain here. Remain here. The words echoed through Ethan's mind. Remain here. A room. a shelter, a temporary bed, temporary meals, temporary safety, temporary everything. The thought bothered him more than he wanted to admit, because Maya had become the least temporary thing in his life. The social worker eventually excused herself, leaving them alone again. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Ethan noticed something. Several papers sticking out from the notebook. Bills, receipts, notebooks, folded pages. Curious, he nodded toward them. What are those? Maya looked embarrassed. Nothing. Maya. She sighed, then handed them over. Ethan opened the first page. His heart sank. Rent notices, utility bills, late payment warnings, medical expenses from Grandma Ruth's final illness. The second page hit even harder. A handwritten schedule, detailed, careful, meticulous, every day mapped out, every therapy session, every exercise, every appointment, every observation. At the top of every page appeared one name, Ethan Caldwell, again and again and again. Page after page, for months. Ethan stared, his vision blurred. Not a single entry mentioned money. Not one. No requests, no expectations, no plans to ask for help. Only notes about helping him stand, helping him heal, helping him believe again. The realization nearly broke him. All this time, while she was losing her home, while she was struggling alone, while she was carrying debts she couldn't possibly understand, she had focused on him, not herself. The room fell silent. Maya looked nervous, as if she expected him to be angry. Instead, Ethan quietly folded the papers, then asked, "Why?" She blinked. "What? Why did you keep doing all this?" Maya looked genuinely confused. The answer seemed obvious to her. "Because you needed help." Ethan looked away. His throat tightened. That simple, that honest, that beautiful. No hidden agenda. No manipulation. No transaction. Just kindness. Pure kindness. The kind people spend entire lifetimes searching for, and often never find. The evening grew darker. Lights flickered on throughout the shelter. The social worker eventually returned. Visiting hours were ending. Ethan should have left. But something inside him refused. Instead, he looked directly at Maya. "Would you like to come back tomorrow?" She smiled softly. "For therapy? For anything." The little girl laughed. A real laugh. The first one all evening, I guess. "Good." He paused, then added, "I've missed my coach." That made her laugh harder. Even the social worker smiled. The sound filled the room with warmth, something neither of them realized they desperately needed. As Ethan prepared to leave, Maya stopped him. "Ethan." He turned. "Yeah?" She held up the notebook. "You know what Grandma used to say?" "What?" "People don't always need someone to rescue them." Ethan listened. "They just need someone who doesn't leave." The words followed him all the way home, and long after. Back at the mansion, he couldn't sleep. Again. The shelter room haunted him. The lonely window, the small bed, the bucket, the notebook, the smile she kept forcing despite everything. Around midnight, he rolled into the library, then into the study, then finally toward the garden, the place where everything started. The Texas night felt unusually quiet. Moonlight spilled across the lawn. The old fence stood motionless. For several minutes, Ethan simply sat there, thinking, remembering, understanding. Then he made a decision. A life-changing one. The next morning, he called his legal team, then his family attorney, then Daniel. When Daniel arrived, Ethan placed a file on the desk. His son opened it, read one page, then another, then looked up in complete shock. "Dad!" Ethan nodded. "I'm serious." Daniel stared again. "You've already decided?" "Yes." The younger man sat silently, then unexpectedly smiled. A genuine smile. "About time." Ethan laughed. "You agree? I think you've been her family for weeks." Neither man said anything afterward. They didn't need to, because some truths become obvious long before they're spoken aloud. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya sat in the shelter cafeteria eating breakfast. She had no idea what Ethan was planning, no idea that lawyers were already working, no idea that papers were being prepared, no idea that her life was about to change forever. Because while Maya believed Ethan had come simply to visit her, Ethan had already started preparing something much bigger, something neither money nor gratitude could fully explain, something that would shock an entire ballroom full of powerful people only a few weeks later. And when that moment finally arrived, the whole city would learn a truth Maya never understood about herself. She hadn't just helped Ethan walk again. She had taught him how to live again. 3 weeks later, downtown Dallas sparkled beneath a sea of lights. Luxury cars lined the entrance of the Grand Crescent Hotel. Valets moved quickly beneath crystal chandeliers. Reporters gathered outside velvet ropes. Business executives, politicians, celebrities, and investors filled the massive ballroom inside. The annual Caldwell Foundation Gala was one of the city's most anticipated events. Normally, the evening focused on technology, philanthropy, and corporate achievements. This year was different. Everyone wanted to see Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire who had become national news, the man whose battle with North Star Insurance continued making headlines, the man whose miraculous recovery had stunned doctors across Texas, the man many still expected to arrive in a wheelchair. Inside the ballroom, whispers floated between tables. "He'll probably make a statement. I heard the lawsuit is worth millions. Did you see the latest report? They say that little girl changed everything." At the center of the room stood a massive stage illuminated by golden lights. Behind it, giant screens displayed photographs from the foundation's charitable work. The atmosphere felt elegant, sophisticated, important. But beneath the polished surface lingered anticipation. Everyone sensed something unusual was coming. Backstage, Daniel adjusted his tie while staring toward the entrance. "You sure about this?" Ethan sat quietly in a private preparation room. The walking cane leaned beside him. His suit fit perfectly. The expensive fabric couldn't hide the nervousness in his eyes. "No." Daniel laughed. "Good. Why is that good?" "Because if you're nervous, it means this matters." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Daniel's expression softened. "You know." "What?" "I never thanked her." Ethan already knew who he meant. "Maya." Daniel nodded. "I should have." The guilt remained visible. Weeks earlier, he had dismissed her, judged her, accused her, and yet she never held it against him. That fact bothered him more than if she had. Ethan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You can still thank her." Daniel smiled. "Yeah." A knock interrupted them. Margaret stepped inside. Elegant as always, though tonight her eyes appeared suspiciously emotional. "It's time." The room fell silent. Ethan looked at the cane, then toward the door, then at his own legs. Legs that had once felt lost forever. Legs that still weren't perfect, still weren't strong, still required effort. But they worked, and that was enough. Across the city, Maya sat nervously in the back seat of a car. She had never attended a gala, never entered a luxury hotel, never worn a dress this nice. The simple navy blue dress had been chosen by Margaret. The shoes were new. The hairstyle took nearly an hour. Yet despite everything, Maya still carried the notebook. It rested safely inside her small bag. The social worker had smiled when she left. Mrs. Jenkins had cried. Mr. Lewis had hugged her twice. Everyone seemed excited. Maya mostly felt confused. Ethan had been unusually secretive for days. Whenever she asked questions, he smiled and changed the subject. That alone made her suspicious. The car finally arrived. Flashing cameras lit the night. Reporters shouted questions. Guests turned to look. Some recognized her immediately. The little girl from the news. The little girl with the bucket. The little girl who supposedly helped a billionaire walk again. Maya lowered her eyes. She hated attention. Always had. Fortunately, Margaret appeared instantly. There you are. The older woman took Maya's hand. You look beautiful. Maya smiled shyly. Thank you. As they entered the ballroom, conversations seemed to pause. Not completely, just enough. People looked, whispered, wondered. Some smiled. Others simply stared. Maya felt uncomfortable immediately. Margaret squeezed her hand. Don't worry, I'm trying. You belong here. The words stayed with her. Because for most of her life, Maya rarely felt like she belonged anywhere. The ballroom lights dimmed. Music faded. Guests returned to their seats. A spotlight illuminated the stage. The host stepped forward. The evening officially began. Awards were presented. Donations announced. Speeches delivered. Polite applause filled the room. Yet everyone knew those moments weren't why they were here. Finally, the host smiled. And now, the room grew quiet. We welcome a man whose journey has inspired millions. Applause erupted. The giant screens illuminated. Ethan's name appeared. Guests turned toward the stage entrance. Many expected wheels. Many expected assistance. Many expected limitations. Instead, silence swept through the ballroom. Absolute silence. Because Ethan Caldwell walked onto the stage, slowly, carefully, using a cane, but walking. The room froze. Thousands of eyes followed every step. One, then another, then another. Not fast, not perfect, but real, completely real. Several people stood instinctively. Others gasped. A few wiped tears. Even reporters forgot to take photographs for several seconds. Ethan reached the center of the stage. The spotlight settled around him. For a moment, he simply stood there, looking out across the crowd, looking at the faces, looking at the disbelief. 3 years ago, doctors said this moment would never happen. Yet here he was, standing. The applause exploded, louder than anything heard all night. The sound rolled through the ballroom like thunder. Ethan waited patiently. Eventually, the room quieted. Then he spoke. I spent 3 years believing my life was over. The room listened, completely silent. I believed experts. I believed reports. I believed limitations. His voice remained calm, measured, honest. And most importantly, he paused. I stopped believing in hope. The words landed heavily. Many guests lowered their eyes. Because they understood. Not the paralysis, but hopelessness. Everyone had known it at some point. Ethan continued. Then someone appeared in my backyard carrying an old bucket. Soft laughter rippled through the room. Warm laughter. Affectionate laughter. Not mockery. Love. The giant screens suddenly displayed a photograph. Maya, standing beside the community kitchen, holding the bucket, smiling. The audience turned, searching, finding her. Maya immediately wanted to disappear. Her cheeks turned red. Margaret squeezed her hand again. Ethan smiled from the stage. They called her a scammer. The room quieted. They called her a liar. Silence deepened. They called her foolish. No one moved. No one spoke. Some people laughed at her. Ethan's voice softened. I almost did too. Maya looked down. The memory still felt painful. Then Ethan continued. But she never asked me for money. She never asked me for favors. She never asked me for anything. His eyes found hers across the ballroom. She only asked me to believe. Maya felt tears gathering. The room remained completely still. Then Ethan said something nobody expected. The doctors helped my body. He paused. But Maya helped my heart. The audience erupted into applause. Many stood. Some cried openly. Daniel wiped his eyes. Margaret stopped pretending she wasn't emotional. Even reporters lowered their cameras. The moment felt bigger than headlines, bigger than lawsuits, bigger than recovery. It felt human. Ethan raised a hand. The applause gradually faded. Then he smiled. And now I'd like Maya Brooks to join me. The room exploded again. Maya froze. No. Margaret laughed. Yes, no. Absolutely yes. The audience continued applauding. Eventually, Maya stood, nervously, slowly, walking toward the stage. The distance felt endless. Every eye followed her. Every camera watched. Every heart seemed to beat with hers. When she finally reached Ethan, he opened his arms. She hugged him immediately. The ballroom melted. Even hardened executives smiled. The moment lasted only seconds, yet nobody would ever forget it. Then Ethan reached into his jacket, pulled out a folder, and handed it to her. Maya blinked. What is it? The audience leaned forward, waiting, watching. Because whatever came next was clearly the real reason for tonight. And when Maya opened the folder, the expression on her face left the entire ballroom speechless. For several seconds, she simply stared. The pages trembled in her hands. Her eyes moved slowly across the document, then back again, then once more, as if she couldn't believe what she was reading. The ballroom remained completely silent. Hundreds of guests leaned forward, waiting, watching, wondering. Maya finally looked up at Ethan. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Only tears. Fresh tears. Warm tears. The kind that arrive when life changes too quickly for the heart to keep up. What is it? She whispered. Ethan smiled. The smile of a man who had spent weeks planning a surprise. The smile of someone finally able to repay a debt that money alone could never repay. It's yours. Maya looked down again. The first page carried legal documents, official documents, court-approved documents, signed documents, documents changing her future forever. She read the words again, then covered her mouth. The audience remained breathless. Finally, Ethan spoke into the microphone. Maya Brooks has spent her entire life helping people. His voice echoed through the ballroom. People she didn't know. People who couldn't repay her. People everyone else ignored. Several guests quietly nodded. They had seen the videos, heard the stories, met the little girl. They knew it was true. Ethan continued. When she lost her home, his voice softened. She didn't tell anyone. When she lost stability, she didn't complain. When she had every reason to ask for help, she continued helping others. The room grew emotional. Many people wiped tears, because everyone knew people like Maya were rare. Pain usually hardens people, yet somehow it had softened her, made her kinder, made her stronger, made her better. Ethan took a slow breath. Today, I am honored to announce that I have officially become Maya's legal guardian. The ballroom exploded. Applause, gasps, tears, shock. The sound rolled through the hotel like thunder. Maya stood frozen, still staring at the papers, still trying to process what she had just heard. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone anymore. Ethan looked down at her. "If you'll have me." That finally broke her. Maya threw her arms around him. The entire room stood. Every guest, every reporter, every executive, every waiter, every person. Standing, applauding. Some openly crying. Even Daniel wiped away tears without bothering to hide them. The embrace lasted a long time, long enough for everyone in the room to understand. This wasn't charity. This wasn't publicity. This wasn't gratitude. This was family. Months later, spring arrived in Dallas. The city bloomed with color. Trees filled with green leaves. Flowers brightened sidewalks. Warm sunlight returned. And life continued changing. The lawsuit against North Star Insurance ended with massive settlements and public accountability. Investigations confirmed serious ethical failures. Several executives resigned. Dr. Victor Langford lost his medical license. The truth finally surfaced. Not because powerful people exposed it, because one little girl asked questions. Questions everyone else ignored. Questions Grandma Ruth never stopped asking. But strangely, Ethan cared less and less about the legal victory, because he had already received something far more valuable: a second chance. Physical therapy continued, week after week, month after month. Progress remained slow. Then suddenly it wasn't. One morning, Ethan walked across the rehabilitation room without assistance. Not far, only a few yards, but completely alone. Dr. Reeves cried. Daniel cheered. Maya nearly tackled him with excitement. The room erupted into celebration. The impossible continued becoming possible. Meanwhile, Maya's life transformed as well. She moved into the mansion, though she still spent most afternoons at the community kitchen, still helped elderly neighbors, still carried Grandma Ruth's notebook everywhere. Some things never changed, thankfully. Ethan made sure she attended one of the best schools in Dallas. Yet Maya remained exactly the same: kind, humble, generous. The money never changed her. The house never changed her. The attention never changed her. Because Grandma Ruth's lessons ran too deep. Years passed. The mansion slowly transformed. One wing became something new, something special, something inspired by a little girl carrying a bucket. The Grandma Ruth Foundation, a rehabilitation and support center for children from low-income families facing physical challenges. Free therapy, free transportation, free medical support, free hope. The waiting list quickly grew. Families arrived from all over Texas, then neighboring states, then farther. Every child received the same promise, the same dignity, the same kindness, the same belief. Because healing began long before treatment. Healing began when someone believed you mattered. The foundation's entrance displayed a simple bronze plaque. 3 words: Grandma Ruth Foundation. And beneath them, hope begins here. The years continued moving forward. Seasons changed. Children grew. Dreams matured. One bright spring morning, nearly 10 years after Maya first climbed over Ethan's fence, thousands gathered at a university graduation ceremony. The Texas sky stretched endlessly blue overhead. Families filled the stands. Graduates adjusted caps and gowns. Cameras flashed. Proud parents smiled. Among the graduates stood Maya Brooks, no longer the little girl with the bucket, no longer the frightened child sitting alone in a shelter. Now she stood as Dr. Maya Brooks, Doctor of Physical Rehabilitation Medicine, at the top of her class, inspired by Grandma Ruth, guided by compassion, driven by purpose. When her name was called, the audience erupted. Ethan stood first, then Daniel, then Margaret, then dozens of children from the foundation. Soon everyone was standing, applauding, celebrating. Maya walked across the stage with tears in her eyes, and waiting near the front row stood Ethan, walking, completely walking, not perfectly, not effortlessly, but independently. A miracle built one step at a time. After the ceremony ended, Ethan handed her a carefully wrapped package. "What is it?" He smiled. "Open it." Maya carefully removed the paper. Immediately her eyes widened. Inside rested Grandma Ruth's notebook. The same notebook, but transformed. The worn cover had been professionally restored, protected, preserved, beautiful, yet still unmistakably Grandma Ruth's. Maya gently touched it, almost afraid to breathe. Then she opened the front cover. A handwritten note waited inside, written by Ethan. She read it silently. Then tears appeared instantly. The message said, "You washed my feet, but you taught my soul how to walk. Love, Ethan." Maya hugged him. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The words had already said everything. Several years later, another sunny afternoon arrived at the Grandma Ruth Foundation. The building buzzed with life. Children laughed in hallways. Therapists moved between treatment rooms. Families gathered in waiting areas. Hope filled every corner. Near one treatment room sat a young boy in a wheelchair, 8 years old, scared, discouraged, certain his future had disappeared. The same look Ethan once carried. The same look Maya had seen hundreds of times. She entered quietly, holding a familiar object, a small bucket, not because she needed it, because it reminded her where everything began. The boy looked up, nervous, unsure. Maya knelt beside him, the same way she once knelt before Ethan, the same way Grandma Ruth once knelt before countless others. Generations of kindness continuing forward. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Tyler." "Hi, Tyler." The boy looked down. "The doctors said it might be difficult." Maya smiled softly. She had heard those words before. Many times. Then she placed a reassuring hand over his and spoke the same sentence that changed her life, the same sentence everyone once laughed at, the same sentence nobody laughed at anymore. "Your feet are only sleeping." Tyler looked up, curious, hopeful. "What does that mean?" Maya glanced through the window. Outside, Ethan walked across the foundation courtyard. Children played nearby. Families laughed. Life moved forward. Everything that once seemed impossible now stood before her. Living proof. Then she looked back at Tyler and smiled. "It means we're going to wake them up together." Outside, sunlight poured across the courtyard. Inside, another story was beginning. And this time, no one doubted the promise. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment and share what part stayed with you the most. When Maya opened that folder in a ballroom full of strangers and realized she finally had a family again, it wasn't the applause that changed everything. It was the moment a little girl who had spent years helping everyone else finally discovered she didn't have to carry life alone anymore. This story reminds us that some of the most important people in our lives don't arrive with power, money, or status. They arrive quietly, do something good without asking for anything back, and leave us wondering how we ever lived without them. Today, think about one person you've been taking for granted. The person who keeps showing up, keeps helping, keeps caring without recognition. Maybe send a message, make a call, or simply tell them what they mean to you. Ethan almost missed the value of Maya because he was looking for answers in all the wrong places. If Maya's journey moved you, comment one below. And tell me this, has someone ever changed your life without realizing it? I'd love to hear your story. And stay with us, because the next story begins with one small act of kindness that nobody noticed, until it changed an entire family's future.